We have to treat finding the right person as a part-time or full-time job. But if you are single for longer than you want to be, it is not because God hates you. It's not because there's something wrong with you. There's always a reason that people are single for longer than they want to be. And one of those reasons is that they simply haven't spent the right time prioritizing their dating lives. Welcome back, everyone, to Nobody Listens to Kevin, a podcast where I tell you the truth about life and relationships that you are not going to hear anywhere else. I'm going to try to be really gentle in today's episode because it can be very triggering for a lot of people, and I do not want any of my listeners to feel judged. But I think that if we can all take a dose of humility and try to ground ourselves and brace ourselves for some of the hard truths that I might share, although I'll share them gently, it's going to be very, very helpful. And my goal is to help people feel understood with this episode. And I want to talk essentially about why people are single for longer than they want to be, why they haven't found the one, why they've gone from relationship to relationship and they haven't found love. And I want to emphasize that there is no judgment or urgency or desperation as I talk about this. My goal here is to make people feel understood, not to make anybody feel like they are doing something wrong. If you're single longer than you've wanted to be, you probably already feel on some level like something is wrong. Something's wrong with the dating society, something's wrong with you, something was wrong with your ex-partner. I just want to demystify the idea that there is something wrong. And instead, I want to bring some understanding to what may be contributing to being single. And full transparency, I do this for a living, and I was single until fairly recently. So I really don't want anybody to feel like I'm judging them. Having said all of that, there are 6 reasons that people are single for longer than they want to be. Every single person has an individual circumstance, and yet every single person fits into one or even multiple of these 6 buckets. Now, before we get into those, I want to talk about what are not the reasons that you are still single, because I hear these thrown around so often, and it's really not it. You will hear people say things like, well, I'm single because I just have really high standards. I'm single because my ex was a jerk. I'm still single because the dating market in LA is horrible. I'm still single because there must be something wrong with me. I'm still single because God is punishing me. I'm still single because it's not the right time for me. All of these things may have elements of truth, but they're not the real underlying reason why the right person hasn't come into your life yet. They are essentially cop-outs. They are surface-level explanations for why you haven't been able to find that love that you crave and desire and deserve. Is it helpful to understand why you're still single? Well, what's more helpful is to try to figure out what you need to do or how you need to turn things around. But in order to do that, first you kind of have to understand the root cause and not just use a cop-out like LA sucks or my ex sucks or, whenever I date someone, they dump me and then they go on to marry the next person. That's something that I've heard a lot. So let me tell you the 6 reasons why people are single for longer than they want to be. The first reason is that you have trauma or you have attachment-related issues. Basically, what this means is that your parents didn't give you what you needed emotionally when you were a child, or in your adult relationships, you were cheated on or neglected or abandoned, or when you were in 6th grade, you were bullied, and that gave you really low self-esteem. Any form of trauma, any form of having friction with the primary attachment figures in your life and being neglected, hurt, abandoned, lied to, etc. The permutations are endless. But the first bucket is that your past history, your trauma, your attachment issues, your abandonment issues, even ones that you're not even aware of, are now rearing their ugly head in your dating life. This keeps you single because we repeat unhealthy patterns based on the traumas that we've experienced that are now subconsciously running our dating lives. If you want to hear more about this one, go back on my Spotify page and check out my episode on subconscious self-sabotage, and it'll explain all about how that works. The second reason that you may not have found love yet is that you have made poor choices in your dating life. And again, I don't say this as a pejorative. I don't say this to hurt anyone. But if you want to understand why things haven't come to fruition for you yet, this is a big contributing factor. A lot of people have chosen the wrong person. They have lied. They have slept around a lot. They have made choices that earned them a poor reputation. And now, especially if you're in your 30s, you may be experiencing some of the consequences of the choices that you made when you were in your 20s. Or if you're in your 40s and you haven't found love, you may be experiencing some of the consequences of poor choices that you made in your 30s. Now, this can always be turned around. If you're willing to work on yourself, if you're willing to admit to your shortcomings, if you're willing to acknowledge some of the decisions that you made that led you down the right path, then you can always turn them around. But if you think, oh, I'm just single because of some other external factor having nothing to do with me, and you're not willing to look at your history, then you're probably going to either repeat the same choices or, at the very least, not understand why you're in the position that you're in. The third bucket is that people are single for longer than they want to be because they had poor modeling. And what this means is that either your parents had a bad relationship or an unhealthy relationship or a dysfunctional relationship, or generally speaking, you didn't have a lot of examples around you of what healthy relationships look like, which means that a good, stable, lasting relationship was not modeled to you. So this often affects people whose parents were divorced and went through a tumultuous divorce. Those people are often single for a very long time, or they go through a string of dysfunctional relationships. Even if your parents had a pretty good marriage, if you saw a lot of unhealthy relationships around you, your uncle and his wife gets divorced, your best friend and their husband gets divorced, whatever it may be, and fighting and dysfunction and tension and sweeping things under the rug, if that's the norm that you see growing up or in your teenage years, then when you grow up, when you're an adult, you're going to have this subconscious belief that good relationships don't really come about that often. I have a client who I've been working with for about 2 years. He's had a girlfriend for 5 years. She's dying to marry him. She's all about him, and he's dying to stay with her. But he's had a lot of problems when it comes to marrying her. And before he met her, he had a lot of problems when it came to finding a person. And the reason is that his parents didn't have a very good marriage, and he didn't have any examples of good marriages around him. So now he's in a position where he might lose the love of his life. This is obviously something that I advise him against. And he might wind up being single again strictly because he didn't have good models around him. And now we're going through this process of helping him see and believe that there are good models of good relationships around, and he needs to sort of reparent himself in the relational sense to understand that those models exist, and in fact, he can be one of them for his future children. But a lot of people don't understand how the lack of modeling of good models growing up has now landed them in a position where they haven't been able to find the love that they want. The fourth reason is that people often spend their prime dating and mating years, their late 20s and their early 30s, or their mid 20s, whatever, simply focusing on the wrong things. People often spend way too long prioritizing their career, prioritizing themselves, and not focusing on dating. And then they wake up one day and they realize that all of those great prospects who wanted to go out with them when they were 25 or 28 or 30, whatever, suddenly a lot of those people are coupled up. And again, I'm a believer that it's never too late. But we do have to be able to acknowledge if you spent your prime years building up your career or focusing on yourself, your own personal goals, and you kind of thought, oh yeah, when I'm ready to get married or when I'm ready to be in a relationship, then I'll go focus on that. It doesn't often work that way. The older we get, the harder it is to meet someone. That's just a reality for both sexes, for men and for women. There comes a point where we have to treat finding the right person as a part-time or full-time job. You might have to get on the dating apps. You might have to get set up through various people. You might have to go to therapy and work on your traumas. As I said, some people listening to this, they'll listen to all of these categories that I've listed so far and they'll go, check, check, check. Yep. It's not that you just have one of these things going on. Sometimes it's a combination and we need to unravel all of that. And it's never too late, but there's always a reason. There's always a reason that people are single for longer than they want to be. And one of those reasons is that they simply haven't spent the right time prioritizing their dating lives. The fifth reason is so common and so overlooked, which is that you have a poor picker. You have a flawed picker. What that means is that you keep picking the wrong people for you. You may have also stayed in the wrong relationship for way too long, and that sucked up a lot of your time and energy and left you with a lot of baggage that now you have to work through. Why do people have a flawed picker? Because they had poor modeling, because their parents didn't model the right relationship for them. And now the people who they choose are people who trigger all of the unhappiness and the lack of self-worth and the problems that they felt in their childhood and in their teenage years and in their adulthood and when they got cheated on. And so they keep picking people who make them feel the way that they used to feel because that is what's familiar to them. And until you improve your picker, until you refine the muscle, if you will, in you that is choosing people who are bad for you and turn that into a muscle that is going to work for you, not against you, you're going to repeat these same patterns. The sixth reason that people are single for longer than they want to be is that their standards are off. And what this means is that either your standards are too high, you are pricing yourself out of the market because your expectations are not realistic. And again, if that's you, that's okay. It's something you can work on. Or your standards for yourself are too low. You don't believe that you are worthy and deserving of good things. And I don't see that many people who they have a really good, even keel sense of their standards. Most people, their standards are too high and they think way too highly of themselves and they are trying to maximize across all categories. Or their standards are too low for themselves and their self-esteem is in the tank and they're accepting crap in their dating lives that they should not be, and therefore they haven't found the right person. Guys, it's always one of these six things. Sometimes it can be multiple. But if you are single for longer than you want to be, if you haven't found love yet, it is not because God hates you. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's for one of these six reasons. One, you have attachment issues and you have trauma that needs to be worked out. Two, you've made poor choices in your dating life. Three, you had poor modeling from parents and other relationships around you. 4, you have spent too much time prioritizing the wrong things. 5, you have a flawed picker that needs to be improved. Or 6, your standards are off, either too high or too low. It's always one of those things. Now, what I do in my private practice with my clients is first we figure out where they fit along that spectrum, which of those 6 things apply to them. And then once we have that sort of diagnosis, quote unquote diagnosis, I'm using that term loosely, then we figure out what needs to happen from there. So I hope that I delivered this information in a way that was gentle and compassionate. I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. But I do think it's helpful if you can look within and understand which of these things apply to you. Then you might have this moment where the light bulb goes off in your head and you go, okay. Well, if my attachment issues are what's keeping me single, then I got to go to therapy. If I'm picking the wrong person over and over again, then I need to practice the opposite. If I'm going after a certain type of person, I got to go after the opposite type of person. If my standards are too high, then I may need to bring myself down to reality a little bit. If my standards are too low, I got to figure out why it is that I'm lacking confidence. And then from there, you can find the right person. You're not too old for love. There's no such thing as it's not for me. I'm never going to find love. Human beings are born and bred to attach and to be together. There is such a thing as not taking responsibility, becoming bitter and jaded, and then basically giving up. But I'm here to encourage all of us not to go down that path. If you have any questions or want to talk more about this, reach out to me through my website, kevinnahai.com, or my Instagram, and please send this to your friends. Talk to you guys soon.